Hi, this is my review of the Polaris role-playing game Core Rulebook 2. This book is a lot of things. It feels like a combination of bestiary, weapons and gear supplement, vehicles manual, rules compendium. It's just a lot of things packed into a single book, and that's excellent. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality overall is great. You have great organization, everything is well written and explained, the document is fully bookmarked, you have awesome looking illustrations. However, I did find a couple of errors in the second page of the table of contents. It says stay bullets instead of stray bullets, and it also says morale instead of morality, that's with an E at the end. But besides that, the quality is top notch. Now let's talk about the contents. First, you have all the details concerning technology. All the information related to repairing your gear, acquiring new stuff, because something really important of the Polaris setting is that you have different technology levels. So you have some more primitive type of weapons and devices, but you also have things that are quite high tech, or things that are unknown in their origin, or some things related to the Azure Alliance or the Mutations. So sometimes it's not that easy to get new stuff. It's better to work with what you already have, repair it and maintain it. And you also have a really cool rule concerning, for example, in science fiction series, comic books and films, there's usually a scene where something is failing, maybe some type of new weapon or a vehicle, and they just give it like a blow or a kick and it works again. And you have a rule to handle that, but that could damage the integrity of the device on the long run. You also have details on how to negotiate in the black market with pirates and scavengers, because those are your best chances to get new stuff unless you want to carry out your own scavenging missions. So you have a pretty nice selection also of tools, communication devices, security devices. Some of them are somewhat mundane and simple. Some of them are quite high-tech, as I was telling you, with nanotechnology as well. You also have details on computer hardware and programs, as well as hacking rules and duels between hackers. You also have details on electronic devices, survival devices, and everyday life details related to different services, food, lodging, etc. You also have information on medical gear, different types of patches and pharmaceuticals, and all sorts of things that you can use to keep your character alive. You also have weapons, of course, different sorts of melee weapons, from very primitive like bats and cutters to more advanced molecular cutters. But you also have bows and crossbows and some firearms, but there will be some really advanced things like explosive frisbees, to put it in a way. You also have different types of drones and heavy weapons. You also have weapons that work underwater, of course, different types of special ammunition, different types of accessories, and grenades and armor and protection. Now it's important to be aware that the armor is a separate category from the Exo Armor. Simple armor and protection has to do more with like a suit that you put on yourself to protect your character. But when it comes to Exo Armor, and I'll get into more details about that in a few minutes, that feels more like a vehicle. So as I was telling you, there you have a nice selection of different armor and suits to keep your character safe, and even portable force fields. You also have details on drones to carry out different tasks and missions. Some of them, of course, to deal damage, to perhaps carry out some type of attack that your opponent is not expecting. But you also have some drones that have to do with, for example, medical purposes. And when you are traveling, you have a pack drone. That's pretty handy. And then you have details on powered Exo Armors. And this is one of my favorite sections. Just take a look at this suit of Exo Armor. It looks really nice. Exo Armors feel more like vehicles. Some of them even have like an autopilot type of system that they move around while you are focusing on other things. And you can arm them with all sorts of devices and subsystems. And you can play around to customize the suit to whatever mission you're carrying out. And because of their dense plating, you will be able to get up close and personal into melee with your opponents. If you like to engage into melee, you need to get your hands on one of these Exo Armors because they come in light, medium, and heavy versions. And you also have details on submarines and vehicles, on how to handle them with all these specs to know exactly what they are for. You have a really nice selection of vehicles that, for example, some that run across the seabed, some of them that are used to navigate across the ocean. You have also a lot of sub or submarine type vehicles, and you have rules for underwater combat. Now, when it comes to the rules of underwater combat, I think Polaris achieves a very good balance because it has a lot of depth and just enough complexity to make you feel like you are really there. That is, if you get attacked, there will be different incidents and damage. That will, maybe something exploded in the engine room, or maybe something happened in the cockpit, and you will have to take different emergency actions to repair that damage at times. And it's quite flexible. For example, if you're fighting against some sort of like an monster from the deep waters, some of the characters could go out in their exosuits and start attacking the monster outside if they need to release their vehicle from the tentacles that the monster has put around your submarine. But you also have enough crunch to carry out some very tense, suspense-filled combat encounters. Maybe you're trying to detect your enemy through sonar, but it also depends on the vehicle that you are using. So, for example, some vehicles are faster than others, and you could have a bit more like a fast or intense-paced action scene, like you would see in, for example, in Submarine, Blue Submarine number 6. That original video animation is awesome. If you need inspiration for some Polaris battles, I recommend that you watch. There are 4 original video animations. So I really like the underwater combat rules. And then you have section detailing creatures, with some creatures that are more common, or what would you expect, like dolphins and different types of sharks. But then you have things like killer algae, mermaids that are not your friendly mermaids at all. You have details on plated sharks, and all sorts of more weirder creatures. Like, for example, there is this thing, I don't want to give too much information about it because it could be a spoiler. That is, you could use it as a sort of like an adventure seed. Let me see if I can find it. I thought it was really cool. Here it is, the Proteus. And the Proteus, you need to read about it. I'm not going to tell you the details as I was telling you. I don't want to spoil anything. You also have other monsters that are specific of the Equinox city, such as the ghost wires, the bob rats, gliders, gorging worms, corral hounds, many things that you can use in your adventures and campaigns. And then you have a chapter detailing advanced rules. And this is one of my favorite chapters because you can add a lot of things to combat. If you thought that combat was somewhat simplistic, well, here you can make it as complex and as deep as you want. Before we get into combat, there is a thing that I thought was pretty cool as well, which is the random mutations chart. You basically make a roll, and you could get 1, 2, or 3 mutations. This doesn't cost any points at all, so if you didn't want to spend points in mutations, you could get a roll for mutations with this table. And you could get some interesting things, but there's also a chance that you could get some negative or harm mutations that you simply did not want. So it's somewhat risky. I really like that it added random professional advantages. Every 2 years that you spend in a profession, you get an advantage, and that's pretty cool because, for example, let's say you are an assassin. Every 2 years, maybe you would get an enhanced attribute, a bonus to your adaptation, or maybe you could create like a network of connections. Or maybe if you're a bartender, sometimes you have a pretty good year and you gained a lot of money, or maybe a lot of customers dropped some things in your bar and you have like a stash of goods. Or if you're a bounty hunter, maybe you have some achievements that result in bonuses to different things, like fame and gear and double income. Or maybe you also got some combat companions. so you have more allies and connections. And every one of the professions, that is bartender, doctor, surgeon, diplomat, they'll have their advantages. Now let's talk a bit more about combat. As I was telling you, they added a lot more when it comes to maneuvers and options, strategies and tactics. Something that I really like is that in the martial arts section, they added a way that you can fight, or rather counter-attack defensively. So it's kind of like a Kempo move or a counter-strike. It's really nice. And you also have details on exploring the combat round, the sequence, how each phase is structured, different types of combat modes, and details on morale. You have states of health concerning wounds and how they could get worse. You have different types of details concerning wear and tear of gear. And something that I also like is that you can hyperventilate before, if you're going to dive without some oxygen breathing device, you will have to hyperventilate and try to work your way through perhaps an underwater tunnel or some other place while you are holding your breath, and that's quite nice. You also have details on intimidation, on adrenaline, because sometimes it kicks in and you could enter into sort of like a survival instinct, or you could even go berserk. There are different things that could result depending on a check. You also have details on, as I was telling you, different breakthroughs when it comes to technological leaps, and more details on Exo Armor, because, for example, maybe there are some penalties related to wrestling. Everything that you want to use to enhance combat, you have right here, and because everything is optional, you don't feel like forced to implement it, so that's really nice. You also have some details on other game mechanics, such as extended opposed tests, details on second attempts, on teamwork and luck, and some Polaris incidents. You even have the option to handle like a character with the latent Polaris effect ability, so maybe sometimes it awakens within that character and you're able to manipulate the Polaris effect. And you also have many different details on skills, like for example optional rules for hybrid skills, different optional skills, limiting skills, supporting skills. And you also get an adventure that's quite nice. I'm going to handle it spoiler free. I'm not going to give you too many details, but this adventure proves that the Polaris role-playing game, even though you do have room for cinematic gameplay, it works really nice when you are trying to live the adventure. This adventure, I don't even want to give you the premise because I think it's going to give away some of the things, but naive characters are not going to survive this adventure. This is an adventure for you to analyze the situation, to think about the background of the Polaris setting and try to find the truth behind things. Maybe things are not how they seem, maybe other things are actually how they seem at first. So it's a pretty good adventure to experience that the Polaris role-playing game it could be handled quite realistically, in my opinion. Well, let me tell you what I think overall of the Polaris Core Rulebook 2. I think that the Core Rulebook 1 and Core Rulebook 2 are the keys that you need to unlock the potential of the Polaris role-playing game. Many of the things in the Polaris Core Rulebook 2 are optional, but many others are also essential in my opinion. All the vehicles, the weapons, and the beasts are necessary to run an effective campaign. You could create your own, but here you have all the details and examples, and I really like all the optional rules. They add a lot of things concerning the position you are taking while fighting, details on different firepower that you are using. You have many ways in which you can tweak combat up close and at range to your liking, and because everything has that optional feel to it, it simply means that the Polaris Core Rulebook 2 is a huge arsenal that you can use to modify your adventures and your campaigns just the way you like it. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.